were you 11 years ago today? At about 0600 on the West Coast, when I got up early in my fire station, turned on the news like I always do, and I couldn't believe what I saw. And like you and the rest of the nation, I watched unspeakable acts of war unfold before me, and it was kind of like a movie. At first I thought maybe it was a War of the Worlds thing or something, but it wasn't, as you know. The world watched as 2,819 civilians died before our very eyes. The world watched and America watched as our lives changed as we knew it back then. Many of you were on fire, dressed just like you are, and getting up from the sleeping bag or coming into your briefing and finding out about it. Aircraft across the country stopped flying. The tankers on your flyer and the heli-tankers quit flying. Where I was, we were right in the middle of an extrication, and the medical helicopter had to turn around and land. 343 firefighters died that day, 90 police officers. It was a pretty helpless feeling as we watched fire department in New York work on that file, and I'll bet you there wasn't a one of you that thought, by golly, if I could be there, I would. But I'll tell you what you may not know, and that's what I share with you today. On September the 12th, an aircraft lifted off from McClellan Air Force Base and flew east. And on board were the two things that America needed at that time to handle the tragedies in Washington, D.C. and New York. Gage's Type 1 team, Van Bateman's Type 1 team, was on that aircraft. Flying alongside them were F-15s, and they escorted them across the country. And you might think they were there to protect them against terrorists, but actually they had strict orders. If that aircraft deviated even 2 degrees off course, they were to shoot them down. They were locked and loaded. The aircraft landed at Dulles Airport. Gage's team got off. Gage's team managed the logistics for the Dulles incident, and a Type 1 team continued through the rotation until it was completely done. Van Bateman's team went to Jacob Javits Center in New York City, the largest continuous convention hall in the world. And there they managed the logistics for 9/11 in New York City from day one until it was over. So take that to heart, that men and women just like you, who dress like you and talk like you and do what you do, were who America called on the day after. There's a fellow named Dan Children I worked with on the bar complex, and he was there. And on the 4th day, he was sleeping on a pile of hose in the Jacob Javits Center at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he heard the clank of hand tools from the Type 1 hand crew as they walked by, lined out, tooled up in their yellows and their pants. They were going to the pile to work at the pile. And he said, you know, I didn't even know they were here, but I knew that it was going to be okay. So take very much pride in what you do. What you do, for the most part, is done in the dark and far away from people and away from the lights of recognition. But it's very, very important. And remember that America called on you, on people just like you, to help solve that problem. Let's have a moment of silence, shall we? Never forget. Have a great shift. Okay, guys, you're released to go.